Thank you very much that you are here with us.
Very welcome.
And I'm happy to introduce Andreas Erbe as founder of Launchlabs in Switzerland, a design thinker and a great workspace designer. And he's actually now with his beautiful background at his beautiful space in Basel. So, and today we will speak about design thinking, because I believe that it's very, very important topic at the moment, and very important for workspace designers as well. Mm-hmm. But for ones who are not really familiar with the concept, could you please tell us a little bit what the design thinking is about? What is this?
Mm-hmm. Basically, design thinking is about putting people first and then thinking about things. That's putting it very, very basically. That sounds simple, but it isn't that simple, particularly in the field of architecture, interior design, workspace design, where I believe all of you are coming from. What we tend to do is we tend to start with a thing. It's, you know, let's build this building, or let's move department A into building B, or let's make this floor look more innovative. We always start thinking with the thing instead of looking at the person, looking at the needs people have, understanding what their problem is, and then actually moving into designing something based on a better understanding of what the problem is that people have, rather than starting with the thing immediately. That's very simply put. I'll give you some examples later.
Yeah, and I think it's like quite close to what we call the people-centered design as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And can we say about that this approach has some specific techniques, or how it works? Like, what should we do?
Sure. If you want, I can share my screen, and there's one way of showing how design thinking moves through different phases, and maybe I'll show you the concept, the process first, and then later illustrate it with some examples. So if you're okay, I'll share my screen, and I believe everybody should see this. Hang on. If we put this here. So, do you now see the screen I'm sharing?
Yeah, I see, and translation works well. So.
Okay, perfect. So, design thinking for workspaces.
Sorry,
Yes?
just in case if anyone will have some questions, you can type it in the comments below, and I will read it to Andreas. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay. Yeah, and please feel free to interrupt me if you say something isn't clear, or if you want to have a discussion. I'm more than happy to have it that way. As I teach this as a subject as well, design thinking for workspace designers. As you can imagine, I could talk all day. So please do interrupt me.
I don't know about the guys who are listening to us, but I will for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this basically what this whole thing, to me, what design thinking is about. I always see design thinking as one method, one tool of helping organizations evolve, transform, develop, call it whatever you want to call it. In the end, it boils down to being adaptable to changes. And to me, this is what space and workspace design should be about. It's to make an organization better at adapting to what they do. And design thinking is a wonderful, very agile way of doing this. To take you, maybe give you very, very quickly what we do. We have a space. It's what you see. I don't know if you do they see me too, my background? If you want, I can later take you around the space and show the space.
Yes, I want.
You want? Okay. So what we have, on the one hand, we have a space. I mean, and I can show you some details. I can show you around here like this.
Beautiful space.
So I can show you later what we have in here. There's design thinking behind the design of this space too, obviously. So we have a space, we do train people in design thinking, we do different innovation projects, and last but not least, we do workspace designs, but they are always linked to an organizational transformation and organizational development. And in the approach, they are slightly different in the sense that we apply design thinking to the way we design workspaces. Maybe to quickly jump into what I mean by space. So whenever I say space, I'm not just talking about the building or the physical space. Yes, I'm talking about that too, of course, in workspace design, but I always at the same time talk about mental and virtual spaces. So we need to, to perceive space differently and work in spaces differently. It's starting in here. We have to make some room for different ways of working in our head as well. That has a lot to do, with permission to work differently, with mindfulness, with resilience. It's all those having mental space ready for yourself in addition to the physical space. And then of course, at the moment, I think we all feel this very, very acutely. Virtual space has become much more important during Corona. And we have to learn, as far as I'm concerned, to build these immersive innovation spaces where we at the same time, pay attention, of course, to the physical shell you see around here, but also to what's going on in people's heads. And then the virtual space that is independent of location. So when I say space, I always mean all three. And I think we should work on all three and not just work on what you see here in green, the physical space, the thing as such. So to maybe...
I love this picture.
Which one? What, this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm also happy to share the material if any of you are interested. So just let me know. Sorry. And I'll send you what we have. The question that you asked actually was, so how is design thinking different and what is different about this process? Just let me jump forward here. What you see in design thinking, and I'm starting at the left, and it looks a bit linear maybe. It isn't. It's a lot messier than it looks here. It's more of a back and forth that you do. But what you basically do in design thinking is you start at the left, you start with people. So what you see here in light gray, sort of the setup stage, that's basically the person giving you the job, whoever that is, whether it's an architect or whether it's the owner of a building or whether it's a business. You first want to gather and establish what their problem is, what their intentions are, what the purposes they are pursuing with this space. And, purpose might come from very different angles. You might be thinking more in terms of value or more in terms of function, or maybe it's in terms of, feelings of your people, or it's a communication measure. There are different reasons why a company might be changing their space. You want to understand that first. Kind of obvious, yes, but here too, you start with the person. And then the second diamond, the second figure shape you see, that's actually starting with the person, with the people. So we always try to understand the problem by immersing ourselves into the environment that those people will be working in, whether that's an existing building or whether it's a building site with virtually nothing in it. We always go to where people will be and where they're actually currently working, and we do research by being there. And we don't just mean, simple occupancy analysis, with an iPad standing there counting. That's not the point. We're not trying to get quantitative data. We're trying to get qualitative data. So in design thinking, the very first thing is you observe and you understand. You go where people are and you try to understand what their needs are. Some of it they will tell you. Yes, go ahead, Kat.
I'm just really, really happy what you said, because sometimes what I see at the moment in the industry that people are saying that it's enough to have a quantitative data. Mm-hmm. And it's only one part of the project. And this qualitative data, it's exactly what's the basics for design thinking exactly. Mm-hmm. It's missing. And in the end, we are getting the projects that have a lot of misunderstandings, and we miss a lot of values and points of the project. It's just very, very important thought, I believe. That's
I totally agree with you. What we tend to do is to use quantitative data too soon, too early in the project, and we trust it too much. Quantitative research, like in occupancy analysis or in market research or in surveys you do with employees, is good, but it should come at a later stage when you're trying to validate something, when you're trying to confirm a hypothesis, because what quantitative research does for you, it gives you truths, as in people prefer A over B. And that is true, but it is too soon if you do it at the beginning of the project. At the beginning of the project, you're not looking for truth, you're looking for insight. You're looking for this, I saw something nobody told me. And this is what you want to do. You want to go into an environment and you want to understand things, even if people don't tell you. You know, people only know what they know. They don't know what is possible. You have to see them, understand them, figure out what their problem is. And that's this diamond. And only then do you go into the solution. So when we see here at the middle, you see this point of clarity where it says brief. This is the moment where you go as a design thinker with all the insights and all the understanding of the problem you have, and then you brief the architect, or then you brief the interior designer. But you've done a lot of work beforehand to understand what the need is from a person's point of view, not from the building's point of view, or from, let's say, for instance, a brand guideline point of view. That's not your starting point. The starting point for a design thinker is the person and their need. Now, what happens normally in Switzerland anyway, I don't know what the situation is in Russia, is that architects, interior designers, planners, workspace consultants, whoever it is, they get brought in only after this brief stage. So they have some owner of a building, an investor, or some corporate facility manager who briefs them and tells them, here's what I want you to do. And some architects are totally fine with this, and others, at least in Switzerland, are getting increasingly frustrated because they say, I would want to be involved. I want to be involved sooner, and I want to understand, but nobody lets them. So to be fair to some architects, they are pushing to get more involvement with people sooner. But some architects, at least in Switzerland, are, let's put it that way, they are very proud experts. And they don't want anybody talking to them because they know, at least they think they know. And they just go and they say, here's the building that is right for you. Now move in there. And then the whole solution gets delivered. And in some cases, if you're lucky, it's a very good workspace. But what happens most of the time, let's be honest, again, at least in Switzerland, I only can talk about Central Europe here, is that people move in. And then about 6 to 9 months after moving in, everybody's sitting there scratching their heads going, oh, this isn't really working, is it? You know, you have occupancy rates like 25%, 30%. You have resistance, people mocking the space, complaining about the space. It's just not working. And then, only then do people go back after they've made a very expensive mistake. And then they do research with people. And I'm saying, come on, guys, do it sooner. Start with people, start doing the research and avoid expensive mistakes later. So the third diamond is all about delivering the solution, but there needs to be something before this. And then to move into the fourth, and this is one way of showing design thinking process, you will find many similar definitions. They're mostly around the central 2 diamonds, but the last one, and that's something we learned, is this idea that is being discussed in workplace consulting, mostly around change management, but it's mainly a communication plan that is meant, you know, planning the move and communicating the move. And we think of this a little broader. Once you have a solution, once you have a space, you need to create the conditions for this space to flourish, for this space to be a success. And if you don't think about, you know, things like how do you communicate it? What are the incentives? What kind of new ways of working do people need to learn? How do we need to build learning into the space, design it into the space? If you don't do things like that and think about them right from the beginning, you will end up having a space that probably isn't working the way you want it. So to summarize it, what design thinkers do from the left, they start with people, the people giving you the job, but the people also that will be using the space. Only then do they move into building the actual solution. And after the solution is built, there should be something else, which is a transformation that you're going through with the organization. So design thinking, starting with people, understanding the problem, then building the solution, and then asking yourself how you can make this space, you know, a catalyst for change, part of the transformation of the organization. So I think design thinking can bring a lot to workplace consulting because it will broaden the way you think about the space and will make spaces much more effective than they are at the moment.
And I totally agree. And what I had just a few months before, I had a client with exactly this problem that you described. They made the move and a quite big change from half private offices, half open space to flexible office with sharing desks. And they made only quantitative analysis at the moment before the move. And they hired very, very high professional architects here in Moscow. They're really great. And they created a beautiful space for them. But it didn't work. They hired us later for the second iteration of the research to better understand why their people are unhappy. And it was so obvious. Like when you're not asking people, when you're not going deeper with the problem, you will get this result. And that's such a pity thing, because first they had a great, beautiful space, and it was printed in all magazines and so on, and it was really made very in high quality, and people they invested a lot of money there, and people are still unhappy. They are saying that, come on, we want to go back to our not beautiful office with all of that, just because we felt more comfortable there, and we were more productive there. And that's exactly what people are getting when they are not interested in the people needs.
That's the problem of magazine architecture. I mean, it might be very beautiful, it might turn out to be very beautiful and very nice to look at, but it doesn't do what it is supposed to do, and that's very often is the problem. You just gave me you're touching on another problem I see with the way workspace consulting or architecture or interior design is done. It's still thought of as a project, as in it has a beginning, there is a thing you want to deliver, and here's the end. I don't think we should think about workspace design as projects, but as processes. It's something that is ongoing, that is evolving, and you should treat a space as something that is like a living part of the organization and is evolving with the organization. But all too often, and that's the way those projects are handled, they are treated as projects, and a project has an end. And I know it's very grateful, or it's very nice for an organization to have an end date, and sometimes if you move people, you have to have that end date, but it shouldn't be finished then. You shouldn't think of workspace design as from A to B. You should think of it which goes of a process that goes in loops and is continuously evolving. And that's just a different way of thinking about spaces. And I don't think that's very common, but I would say we have to start thinking of workspace design as a process rather than a project.
We had a great talk with Elvira like a month ago, and she told, I asked her, what is the workspace strategy, actually, strategic approach to design? And she said greatly that it's the mindset of people who are doing this. And it's so true, because what you asked, what we have in Russia, and we have similar situation when we are coming with brief to the architect. They usually already see the space, how it should be. It should be beautiful. The perspective should be like this. Forms should be like this. And at the end, we are getting very beautiful spaces, but not really spaces that works for people who are using it or for the business. Yeah. So
and I also think of the space as something that is, has to be done in one go and then it's finished. And I think of a space more of as a living prototype. It is something that evolves. And the space you see around me here, that has changed over the years. We're in here 4 years now, and it's never looked the same. There are some things that are permanent structures, like you see right behind me, but all the rest is movable, and all the rest is continuously adapting and changing to whoever is working in here and whatever their need is. So I think we need to also design spaces less with a mindset of we're doing something which will be finished to actually we're bringing something alive that will grow and evolve. And that's a different way of thinking about architecture.
Yeah. Andreas, I had some questions there, but I see that you have a beautiful presentation in there. So,
yeah.
If you want, you can continue with slides or with
Sure.
questions.
I'm happy to do that. If you have the questions, I can jump around, as I didn't know exactly what to prepare. I just pulled together a couple of things. I mean, if you're okay, I'll just carry on a little, and if you have questions,
yeah, I will just interrupt you with the questions into the process.
Maybe in addition to this, what I mean by spaces, design thinking lets me do this.
Yeah.
I think one thing, and that is a discussion you have a lot, is the discussion of purpose. What is the meaning of a space, and what does it mean to people? And I think particularly with the generations that are moving into the workforce, they will not accept spaces that are purely functional. There needs to be a little more meaning and more purpose to that spaces. So I think, and I said that the design thinker would first think about the people who will be in this space before he thinks about the thing, the space as such. And agile approaches, and design thinking is one of the agile approaches, I think are something that could really enrich the workspace design process, because they by default build in adaptability into spaces. And currently it's adaptability which we desperately need. I mean, look at where we are at the moment. We have to be extremely adaptable, and our spaces have to be adaptable with us. And design thinking as an ongoing process is just better suited to that kind of thing. Starting with the why, starting with the sense. One of the questions or conversations we have with people is, and whether they are the people giving us the job, the architects, the owners, or whether they are people in the space, we tend to have those discussions around those four dimensions. Obviously, the emotional dimension of, hey, does the space make you feel good? Can you identify with it? Does it motivate you? Do you actually feel better when you come in here rather than when you go out of the space? And the red bit is, the space is the most, and that, I'm sure you know that, is the most powerful way an organization can communicate. No way of communication addresses more senses than a space. It's extremely sensual, and I don't think people are using it enough as a communications tool as well. If you look around in this space says certain things, others it doesn't communicate. And unfortunately, it's a bit too empty due to Corona at the moment. But of course, the space communicates something. It says a lot about you, and has a huge effect on the people that are in the space. And then the green bit, obviously, does it do what it is intended to do? Of course, you need to look at that. And then last but not least, and I'm by no means denying that dimension, there's a business dimension to the whole thing, of course. And you just need to find the balance between those different, let's say, views or different focuses on the purpose of your space. So that is a conversation we very early on have with our clients, as in, does this make sense to you, and how should it make sense? Where are you coming from? And if one client might forget 3 dimensions, we can at least say, hey, are you sure you only want to talk about the value of the space? Do you not want to talk about function, communication, emotion a little more? And it's a good trigger for a conversation before we then move into this process that I described.
How people are reacting when you ask this question? Because I know that a lot of people are thinking that it doesn't make sense actually even ask. Not sometimes what I hear from people around, that why you're asking this question, it's so obvious, and you're like, come on.
Mm-hmm. Or they tell you, don't ask me, I'm telling you what to do. That's difficult, what you can do then is, you can say, you can come up with examples where people actually maybe didn't tell you certain things, but you had to do it anyway because you observed it. So I think asking alone isn't enough. Asking is okay, but you have to do you have to do more than just ask. You know what? If you don't mind, I'll take you over to. There's a whiteboard in the space where we are working with a client virtually at the moment, where we're having exactly this discussion. I don't think you should just ask. You have to do. Can you actually see this?
It's quite small, but
is it too small?
But yeah, I see that it's a wheel.
So it's a wheel, and what we always say is, look, before you articulate what the problem is or formulate what the problem is, gather all the information you can. Yes, talk to all the experts, but that's only half the story. What you should be doing as well here, on the other side of the wheel, is go and gather some experiences for yourself. You know, go to the sites, talk to the people that will be working there, but then also the imagination bit. Tap into the creativity you have as a team, but also the creativity that is there with the people that will be in the space, and use your own ideas. So this, we call it the preparation wheel. We have this conversation around purpose and all the sources that you can tap into with the client. And we urge the client to not jump to conclusions too soon, as in, I'm the expert, I know how offices are done, trust me, now go away and let me do this. This is not how things should be run in our view. And I'm not dismissing the expertise of architects. I'm questioning the process that architects have been taught in the last 50, 60, 70 years. I just don't think it is complete. And it leads to, in many cases, very expensive mistakes. And it is all to do that the people who should be in the space aren't involved properly right from the start.
Yeah, and I would also add to this thing that you were saying about the working on the process, not on the project. When you're working on the process, it's much easily to find this inspiration. Mm-hmm. Because when you're going like with the flow, I know, because I felt it many times during the projects, when you're working on exactly on the process of the research and of the design, it's a lot of insight that appears. And even if they're quite obvious or simple, it gives you big motivation and inspiration to keep working. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as a question, when we're talking about this wheel, talk to the people, yeah, quite like we can understand what it might be, gather information, and what was the other one?
There was information, talk to experts, get your own experiences, you know, full body research, yeah. Go where the people are. You yourself, don't send a survey, don't commission an agency. You yourself have to go there.
Yeah, that's exactly what my question about the gather experience. So we generally use the main methods for here. It's an observation, actually.
Yes, that's exactly it. Because observation, you know, observations are key to understanding implicit needs, things people don't tell you or won't tell you. There's those two aspects. You know, in workspace designs, there are things that people will not tell you, like, you know, when they flee from the office and are not at their desk because they can't or don't want to work at their desk, people don't admit to that thing. They won't tell you. You know, you go and do an occupancy analysis and you suddenly go, they aren't at their desk for 70% of the time. Now, this is an interesting truth, that's fine, but what is really interesting, and that's what you should be after as a design thinker, as a workspace designer, why are they not at their desk 70% of the time? That is the interesting question. And that is not a truth, that is an insight you're after. You are after, Kate, you touched on something important, you're after inspiration. You want to, by interacting with people in their environment, you want to get these inspirations, these ideas, these you know, these moments of clarity where you suddenly go, I saw something nobody told me. And that's not the things you can ask, you have to see. So there is a big importance difference between observation and interrogation. You know, the asking people things is right or is good to validate later on in the process. But earlier in the process, you're not after validation, you're after inspiration, as you said, Kate, and that's a different thing.
Mm-hmm. And also what I saw quite often when you're doing just an occupancy study, and you're saying to the client that, come on, look, the spaces were empty about 40% of the time, just really empty. And they're like, probably people were on the holidays this moment, or maybe exactly in this period of time when you've done this study, they were on the meetings. For sure. And it's like you have the truth, but they're still trying to avoid it. Like, you know, this fact that people are not actually working all the day at their desks. And if you believe only the quality of data, you will never understand why this space is empty. It's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah, it's you know, that for me, this again, what you're touching on, this is fundamental difference of, am I after a truth, that is quantitative approach, or am I after an insight, and that is a qualitative approach? And early in the process, you should be after insights, and later on, you should go and try to confirm what you've developed. But quite often, it's done this way around, and that's a mistake. You act on what you think is true, and then only later you have the insight where you go, oh, I made a mistake. And then you go and correct that mistake, and that's very expensive.
Yeah. That's
so yeah, that's an interesting discussion we have a lot with clients. And you know, in some cases the client is not interested in listening because, you know, quite often they've been given a project and they've been given an end date, and they don't really want to talk to you about the why and the need. They just want to deliver the building. That's all. And you can't do much in those cases. I even understand the project managers, the planners, if they say, hey guys, you're too late and there's no room for this, I have to, you know, hand over the keys on the 1st of January. I understand that. But it's still not good. What you should do as soon as possible, I would argue, is that you say, hey, I think of this space that we're developing as a prototype we co-create, and it's something that evolves rather than something that is delivered in the way a deliverable of a project is delivered. I'm totally aware that an architect's job is to finish and complete the building, and I know that. But we have to sort of stop limiting ourselves to the thing and start thinking about people and their needs more. And that brings me to the beginning of design thinking again.
By the way, how do you think, what's the most valuable for the project? I have my own opinion, but I'm really interested in yours. When we have people who are in the workplace consultancy working on the first stage, like the strategic consultants are working in the first stage, creating the brief and then giving it to the architects, and the architects are keep working on the brief and creating the space on their own, or when the whole 2 stages, the research and the design projects are making in one hands, you know. Maybe in architects are also the researchers or something like that.
I'm not sure if you're hinting at what I'm thinking. The problem in this process, if you look at a process like with these 4 diamonds, the way you do here, is or in any workspace design project, is the handover. You know, there's the business owner who gives it to facility management, then facility management gives it to the architect, then the architect gives it to the interior designer, who then gives it to the planner, and then the planner delivers the building. And hands over the keys. The problem is, to me, is this constant handover where the person that was before isn't involved anymore. And to me, workspace design should be a co-creation all along the way. So the ideal example of what we had was a project at a large company in the center of Switzerland, where for the IT department, we redid their offices, and right from the beginning, it was us, the future employees, and the architects doing everything together, right from the research. So the architects were there in the research, and that is exactly the right thing to do. Have everybody involved all the way. Don't hand over, because you have a lot of loss of knowledge, a lot of loss of efficiency. You lose sight of the needs if people aren't involved along the way. So yes, this makes this whole thing a little more complicated to coordinate. And yes, it might even cost a little more in the beginning, but you will avoid those massively expensive mistakes of actually building the wrong building. That's what's expensive.
Yeah, I just really see this problem, and what is happening at the moment, for example, in our market, that we have people who are trying to get to the workplace consultancy, and they are not keep working on the project during the architecture stage, and architects are not really familiar with workplace consultancy and so on, and they are not really interested in this topic at the moment, not a lot of them at least. And that's exactly what is happening. They're losing part of the knowledge and the part of the experience, what you told us about before. That's a very, very important, that you on yourself can get this experience into the space during the research, this get experience part. And if we are getting very, very detailed brief, it's done very nicely and with lots of attention, and you give it to the architect. Even in this case, you will not be able to translate all of your experience, but because you felt it. Thank you. It's just
part of it you carry in yourself, this experience, you know, and part of it is explicit. You're aware of it, you can tell people, and part of it has become part of you, and you don't think of it anymore. You just know. And you bring it along without consciously saying that this is your experience. This is this idea of, you know, explicit and implicit knowledge. What you can pass on also in a Word document or, you know, in a database is what you know explicitly. But what you bring to the table in terms of implicit knowledge, things that you don't even think about anymore, is really important. And that, you know, it's all the stuff that you experienced in the research phase, and you bring that to the table. And you shouldn't drop people out of different phases of the projects, because you will lose knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. I just really believe that it's very important. And I also feel that when people start, just to end this topic, that I believe that when you start from the scratch, exactly from the first point of the project, and you end with the client and the end point of the project, if you will see this whole scheme, what you have from the first onboard point till the end of the solution, the culture point, and if the person involved on the whole stage, he will be much more interested in the result of the client.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the responsibility will be much bigger.
And the engagement and involvement will be bigger. And I also think you will have a lot less resistance to a space if people who move into the space know that somebody representing them was involved in the development of that space. So you can already take out resistance to the space at a very early stage by involving them sooner.
Yeah, I totally agree. I also wanted to ask you, what do you think about different techniques of design thinking? What else should we do? We talked a lot about the observation and about some qualitative and quantitative data.
Some techniques. Just let me, you know, I'm jumping through. There's, as I said, I'm happy to share this with you. I'm just going forward.
No, we can check. We will be happy to listen. I'm just worried a little bit about your time because I can talk about it like all day long.
me too. One idea. Do you know what? I'll show you something else first from that's actually on these whiteboards back there as well. One thing that is important in design thinking is this idea of iterating and prototyping things. I don't know, is this big enough for you?
I see something like this.
Yeah, you see the loops, but you don't really see it big enough.
Yeah.
The idea, one of the ideas, or one thing that is central to design thinking is that this idea of working in loops. You know, you start very small, you throw something out there and you learn from the reaction, even if it isn't finished, even if it isn't thought through. Then you make it a bit bigger, you involve more people, you get more feedback, you make it more specific. And then as you go along, this thing with that provokes feedback, that gets feedback, will get better and better and better. So again, that's a big difference to traditional project management. You don't start and then do your work and then show the deliverable. You actually very, very soon and very early, you go out and show stuff and you treat things as prototypes, even if they aren't finished. So this is a notion that is a bit difficult to understand in workspace design, but I'm going to show you an example where we did it. This is a floor plan of a building we did with you might know the Impact Hub initiative.
Sure.
Yeah. So Impact Hub Basel was one of our partners and clients, and we developed their space with them. And if you look at this floor plan, you have you see the zonings behind it, you see the kind of furniture we had in mind. This was developed as a co-creation. We were actually literally in the empty building with the team. I don't know, I have a picture somewhere of that. But this is the result. And I want to draw your attention to the pink bit at the top left where it says white space. So this is space we left white. We didn't do anything in there. So we just left it empty. And the whole idea behind it was to say, look, if spaces is a prototype, we have to be able to evolve it. And if we believe in observation and not just, questioning people, we have to go into that space and then we see from the people how they use that space. So we basically said to the architect and the interior designer, look, from our work with the Impact Hub teams and the future users of the Impact Hub, here's the zoning. We want to see, this is the kind of furniture we could imagine. And there we handed over to the architects and the interior designers. And they strongly challenged us. Actually, the architect's head nearly exploded about this idea of white space, of not doing anything there and just seeing what happens. He said, no, come on, this is not how you do things. Let's put something there. Let's try, let's make an assumption. And the guy who gave us the job, the head of the Impact Hub, said, no, I'm fine with this. Let's leave this white. Let's make this into, a space where the people will show us what it is they need. And we're now in this process of actually learning what they are going to do. They are putting mainly small group events in there. So we've probably, there's a big workshop space downstairs, but we didn't have enough workshop space in there. So the green bit underneath the arena, the pitching arena you see there is too small. So we are learning things just by being in the building, watching people and going, we got something wrong here. This is what they need. And this idea of white space, I'm now continuously building it into projects, comes from the idea of iterating and prototyping in design thinking and treating the space as a prototype, as a living prototype, and you learn with the space and with the people that are in there. You don't try to complete it because you think you know how it should be done, because generally you don't. You only learn after.
I really love this idea about the white space. And I actually wanted to ask you about the examples of the prototypes, and it's a great example, because in space, when we're speaking about the big spaces and the quite big budget, it's quite difficult to create these prototype iterations. We really have to think deeply what it can be. And it's a great example, I think.
So let me have a look for I was wondering if I can see where you, yeah, actually here. This is us with the Impact Hub team in the space, actually doing the development, the zoning with them. So as you see, it's not on our desk. We have different versions of plans that we had here, and that came out of previous discussions. We were in the space discussing the way they would see the space, and this is a real picture. That's the team and one of the future users. So this is how we, you know, we're in the second diamond there, where we're developing the solution. But the solution, again, it's a co-creation. We're not doing it for them, we're doing it with them. That is a very, very fundamental difference.
And it's fun.
It's fun, of course. It's fun. It's much more fun. It's a really interesting bit, you know, to do this kind of thing.
That's great.
Yeah, so that this is an example. I'm now jumping back and forth, but I hope this is what you are looking for. So maybe, Kate, maybe the best thing is for you to just ask me, do you have an example of, and then maybe I jump to that.
Yeah, I will actually happy if you will be able to show it's in the order that you have, because I'm just so curious about each slide that I see here. I'm very sorry. I was going to finish it in 40 minutes, but
yes, I'm more than happy to do that. Or if you want to, you know, have a follow-up call and have a second call with another focus, we can also talk about that. But if you're okay, I'll just show you around. Okay?
Yes, sure. I'm totally okay.
So how will I do that? I'll just minimize the slides here. Let me get this out of the way. And I'll.
In between, we have a question from Maria. What are you thinking about the co-working spaces as the in general, in terms of the strategic design, and not only about the co-working, but about flex offices as well?
I think this whole idea, let's call them third places, you know, co-working, maker spaces, repair cafes, all those different ways that is manifesting itself. I think it's an extremely important development in our society, not just for workspace design, and you know, particularly now as well. I think a lot of people are seeing the opportunities that home office has, but we're also seeing all the downsides of home office. Now let me hang on. You're not. I'm trying to share another screen here. I'll get to you back to your question at the moment. I'm just sure. Trying to. Let me see, the screen sharing. Oh, do you know what? I'll stop sharing and I'll try to get to my screen. Okay, so if I share this now, I'm just wondering, do you now see
a beautiful blue screen with the arc and door and so on?
What I'm trying to share is you know, my camera, that you actually see the space, and you see the space a little bigger. What do you see at the top left? Do you see me now in the space?
Yeah, I see you're in the space, in the small
I'm trying to enlarge this window, but it actually won't let me.
But you want to share the screen, and now I see you.
Now you see it bigger.
Yeah, now I see you bigger, like for the whole screen.
Yeah, so because when I show the space later, it's obviously nicer for people to be able to see it that way. Okay, so there we go. Got the space big now. To get back to the question, I think it's a really important development, but it's still at the baby phase. I think our whole society is still experimenting with, you know, co-working and what is it, what isn't co-working. And I still think we're finding all the way those spaces between the home office and between the corporate office, if you want, how they're evolving. And co-working, I don't know, I know, Kate, you've done a lot of thinking about this. Everybody tends to say co-working now, and I'm not so sure in some cases they mean something different, you know, just because maybe a company like Regus, or for instance, or worldwide, that used to have rent out offices all over the world, I wouldn't call that co-working. So I think we're still finding our way to define this phenomenon and make it more important, because I think with where discussions around sustainability, you know, mobility are going, needs of a increasingly mobile and more demanding workforce, I think a lot will happen in terms of co-working. So co-working will become more important. Now, having said that, I don't know what the situation is in Russia, but in Switzerland, it is extremely difficult to make money out of co-working. It's the margins aren't very high. One reason is that the square meter is very expensive in Switzerland. So in many cases, it's either an idealistic thing. You do it because you believe in it, or it's something that is an addition to what you are offering out anyway. So we have about 4 or 5 co-workers, but we do it very informally. And they come in, 2 of them are here at the moment, one's over there, 2 are back there. But this is not the main purpose. This is just a little bit add-on contribution margin, bringing life into the space, you know, having different people inspiring each other. That's the idea behind it. But we're not doing co-working as a business. There's just not enough money in it. It's an add-on if you look at it that way. But this also probably is, I don't know, even, and this space we have here too is a manifestation of something going on in the middle between the home and the office. And I think we're on a journey there. And in terms of strategic design, it's something, the demand will go up, but we have to find ways to make this either commercially viable on its own as a business model, or become part of what companies offer in their workplaces. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I've just been thinking out loud here, basically.
Yeah, Мария, if you have, Маш, короче, если у тебя там есть какие-то более точные вопросы, ты прям спрашивай, я буду их транслировать. Вот. Maria's telling that Regus call themselves co-working right now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a comment. And about the Russia, I think that what we have at the moment, we have a lots of people who are actually trying to earn on the co-working, but it's not exactly how it was before, how it was in the co-working idea. As a co-working idea, basically it really transformed to kind of a sharing offices.
Yeah.
And so it's spaces that are basically trying to rent out their space for big companies, or trying to separate it for the small offices for startups or some kind of a small teams. Mm-hmm. So generally trying to adopt the WeWork format and make it even more business than the community, I think. Mm-hmm. It's what we see in Russia.
No, I don't know. WeWork all over the world, they're struggling a bit. I think they might have grown too quickly, but I think the only way to make co-working as a standalone business model work is to scale it and to run it very, very efficiently. And WeWork is doing that. I know that they're financially struggling at the moment. Not sure as to what the reasons are, but I think if WeWork as a business model works, it's because they just make, even though they're making razor thin margins, just by the scale of things they're doing, they are making money. But I think the co-working space with 6 or 10 desks is not really a sustainable standalone business model. Yeah. It's a good addition to other offers that you may have as a company, but as a standalone thing, I find it very, very difficult. We tried it here for 4.5 years ago, and we very quickly said, that's probably not going to work. So the space we have here has changed. It's it's a multi-purpose space, and it adapts to whatever is needed in the space.
Yeah, we have something like that as well. And Maria is telling that the thing that we have at the moment, it's called the service offices, and with no community at all. So,
you know, that's the Rigas approach. Rigas is basically serviced offices, and
it's not only Rigas in Russia. It's like companies that actually is thinking on making money out of this, not the any value.
But it is a purely, you know, that is a purely functional view of workspace design. And, you know, when you think back to the purpose thing I showed earlier, that's just talking about function. Serviced offices is basically providing a function. There's very little emotion in there. It doesn't really communicate much about the company. It has a strong focus on delivering value. But if it has a space, you know, for a community, it won't make sense. It's just basically a shell. And I think co-working sets itself apart by actually having a community that belongs to that space, that grows with this space. And that's where, you know, companies like WeWork differ from companies like Rigas and Spaces, for instance. An interesting distinction, Rigas and Spaces call the person responsible for whatever floor it is, the floor manager. Whereas WeWork calls that person the community manager. Now that is a very important distinction you have here, and it says a lot about the culture. The first example is we're all about the thing, and WeWork says we're all about people. And it's a massive difference. And that's, to me, is the difference between co-working, true co-working, and just a shared office.
Yeah, I totally agree. And if we are touching this topic at the moment, how do you think these spaces will transform because of the COVID virus? And will they transform, or will they adopt any kind of new ideas?
What I think will happen at first, there will be the pendulum will swing to one extreme. There's this, you know, I think there's a lot, you're hearing it already now. Oh, move everything digital. We'll only do online meetings and let's half our office space. And you have all these comments. I'm thinking, no.
Yes, exactly. No.
It's a bad mistake. I think we have to get better. I think it will swing back again, but I think there might be some kind of extreme reaction there in the next 6 to 9 months, where people try to do every workshop online, every meeting online, and save, you know, on meeting and spaces and desks. But there are some considerable downsides, you know, to people get lonely. The function at home isn't always what it should be. Then there's ergonomic factors. Your eyes hurt, it'll go square, and your ears go red from all the phone calls. It just doesn't work to move everything into the digital space. And even if you're an introvert and you're quite comfortable doing that, even the most introverted of introverts occasionally needs a human touch. And I saw it the day before yesterday. 2 of my team came back for the first time after 7 weeks being, you know, locked down at home. They were hugging each other for about 5 minutes. I know it's not allowed, but they still did it. And they were so happy to see each other, to be back. And I just think as long as you can't, you know, have digital spaces where we can actually touch, smell, taste, it will lack half of our senses, and it's not going to work. So I think there will be more digital space, there will be more done virtually, but after an initial extreme reaction, it will come back again. So don't get rid of your spaces, and don't think that you can do without physical spaces. I really don't believe that.
I totally agree. And also, what we had, we made some kind of a survey lately, and it was I was surprised with insight that this isolation lockdown phase was the hardest one for people who stayed alone at home. So for ones who stayed alone, it was much more difficult to much more difficult to focus and much more difficult to be productive at home, because exactly this reason that you told, we are all social creatures, so we actually...
I actually think from an evolution point of view, we are not programmed that way. We are not a single animal, we are a herd animal, and we need to be around other human beings, or we will start feeling, not all the time, of course not, we all need to be able to reflect, but we need to be around other people, we need to belong, and we need to feel that we are part of some group and that we are protected by this group. I think this is very, very, very deep. That's a very, very deep need that is very human, and it won't go away. So I think these physical spaces, you know, maybe to put it differently, I think the nature or what we look for in our physical spaces will change. So an office won't be purely functional. It will become more like, you know, the town square in a village. You know, people who want to come there. It's like a home base. It's like, you know, where you go to be with others. And if you go home, you go home. That's fine. But occasionally, you want to be on the village square with other people.
Yeah,
and I think the office is probably, the physical space is probably going to move a little more in that direction.
And I'm really afraid of people who are saying something like, okay, come on, it's a virus and it's a danger at the moment. Let's isolate inside of the offices as well. Like, let's make some kind of shells for each person and so on. And when I hear some kind of these things, and like people, no.
No, that's not sustainable. We cannot, as a society, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years isolate wherever we go and distance wherever we go. You know, this. I think we need to keep a professional distance, not a social distance. That's a different thing. So you keep hearing social distancing. I think this is bad for our mental health. It doesn't work. So we need to find ways that we can interact. And in times of viruses, and I don't think this will be the last one, we just need to learn to behave slightly differently until the virus is a little more under control, and then we can gradually loosen things again. Because as you can see also from a commercial point of view, my beautiful space is unfortunately empty, but that is due to Corona.
Yeah. Do you think that anything else will change what we didn't discuss yet because of the coronavirus?
Yes, I think, you know, the sort of the physical spaces, I said, I think they will become more of a town square kind of thing. Mentally, we are also changing. We're becoming, you know, more adaptable. We know that we have to also, from a mindset, become more adaptable. So a couple of, you know, things like mindfulness, resilience, you know, agile behaviors, all those things will become more important in our heads. But with the virtual space, I think something is going to happen too. So I think we will be getting used to, from a behavior point of view, to use digital tools a lot more, but they will become a lot more important. And we will use them to eliminate, let's call it unnecessary travel. You know, if I think of myself, the amount of air travel I've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years, literally all over the world. I once flew for a speech to Tokyo for 2 days. That is not going to happen anymore. This is the kind of thing that will be delivered in this format now. So I think we will get better at using digital tools. The digital tools will get better, and our travel behavior, business travel behavior, will change significantly. Already before Corona, we had more and more clients asking for remote coachings. You can't do everything remotely, but certain things you can and you should be doing. So I think our business travel behaviors and the way we use virtual spaces is going to change as well. And I think, I don't know if you've seen that meme going around, who has done most for digital transformation in your organization. And option 1 is the CEO, option 2 is the CIO, and option 3 is COVID.
No, I haven't seen it.
So yeah, I think, you know, it's and that to me is one of the, you know, good things about this whole difficult time we're going through at the moment, it has forced us onto a learning curve. And the learning curve for me has been all around the virtual spaces. You know, for 2 years, I've been saying, oh, we have to make advances in digital.
What do you mean by learning curve?
I've learned a lot on how, you know, how to use these digital tools, you know, things like, you know, we had to, with our clients, move our workshops from a physical space in here, basically, to a virtual space. And that is just a different way of teaching, interacting. You know, there's things like, there's a lot less social control, attention spans are shorter, you have to switch media more often, or the kind of interaction, you have to bring down the time blocks you're working. There's tons of things I'm learning when it comes to doing online workshops. And without Corona, I wouldn't have learned it. I would have just pushed it out. So yeah, I'm learning, and it's okay. That's one of the, you know, one of the upsides of this difficult phenomenon at the moment.
And I also believe that in terms of what you said about the digital and business traveling things, that we will get more global finally.
Yeah, that too. And staying local and becoming more global.
Yes, and that's a really great point. At least for Russia, it's a great point because we are still like 10 years or 15 years before the Europe stage of development in lots of things. And at the moment, we are kind of having this opportunity to get faster, and we will be able to reach all of this, even mental behavior and workspace behavior and work behavior as well.
So Kate, shall I quickly show you around? We got distracted. Is that interesting to everybody?
Yeah, I think we can go around, because I also wanted to ask you for the second interview for all of this beautiful presentation that you have.
Sure.
Because now we're really running out of time. I think it's quite difficult for people to listen for a quite long time. But yeah, let's finish with the beautiful space. I really love it.
Okay, and then I can do the conceptual presentation and examples later. I will show you. I'll show you then a couple of things. What you see here used to be an old machine factory. They build large shipping engines in here. There's the crane up there.
Yeah.
You know, the materials and offices at the side. It's typical industrial architecture, but we converted it to an innovation space. And the whole idea for the space here is to keep it as adaptable as possible. So anything can happen in here, from solitary work on your own to having conversations in groups of 2, then doing, you know, meetings, projects, right up to big workshop and large events. So we've designed what was a very flexible shell to house different kinds of working and adopt to different kinds of needs. Everything you see in here, apart from the big wooden structure in the background, is movable. So the whole space can adapt. If you look at the tables, for instance, you see they've got wheels. All the whiteboards, you see they are either they are light, like the ones you see here, or they are on wheels, so we can move them. The stands you see here, where we do presentations and pitches, they're on wheels. I can move them on my own. They only look big and heavy, but they're not. So
and I remember they have a surprise from the other side.
Yes, they do. So everything in here is adaptable. So they have at the back, you can actually sit in the stands and work in them. So we've used the negative space to, you know, people who want to check out of what is going on at the front can go and sit in the back and maybe have a separate conversation without distracting the others. So this is a different thing is then actually my office here. Me and my team, we sit in here, and you see we also use. Sorry, yeah.
Definitely your office. Yeah.
There too. More stickers.
Yeah.
So this is our office, and next to the office we have a small workshop and meeting room. You know, and one of the co-workers is in here at the moment because we said, yeah, we have to distance, and we can only have 5 people in the space. So at
in
the
the whole space.
In the whole space, yes. Unfortunately, there's no more groups of 5 people, no more than 5 people in one room. You know, and all those. This is a big room. It's still 5 people.
By the way, this blue chair above, does it usable, where
Yes,
it's just a
yes.
decoration? Yeah.
My daughter loves it. She says my dad has a chairlift. It's actually from a skiing area in Switzerland, and we once had a market in here for Swiss craft, and they put this up, and I liked it as an item, and you can actually still use it, the chairlift here, up there. The crane you see here with the beam on it, you can move that backwards and forwards, and you can also move the chair. So I've done presentations sitting in that chair, so that works. We have a big screen here, as you can see. Mm-hmm. Then there are little phone booths, phone boxes you can retreat into, or when you want to have a conversation, just the two. What we also have, and so moving back here now, is a kitchen and a coffee area. So where you can go and make yourself your coffee or your lunch. And then, unfortunately, that's just to sit and read or have a phone call. Basically the reception where you come in. Unfortunately, yeah, as you see, there's no one in the space. But what we try to do with this space is be as flexible as possible and allow for as many different types of usage depending on who comes in, you know. And sometimes people only use some of the space, sometimes they rent the entire space, sometimes they work with us, sometimes they're on their own. It's just very flexible. Currently in the larger meeting room you see here, there are two co-workers. We can't go in there, but we can go into the smaller room. This one here, we use this room for projects. So for instance, what you see in the back, sorry? You
use a standing
desk. Yes. Yeah. The reason we have standing desks here is in here we do very active work, project where we don't want to sit down. We want to have people, you know, standing, the circulation going. Actually a nice design detail on these chairs. Don't know if you see them here.
Yeah.
The rounded edges, they make you slide off. So they encourage you to stand up. So these stools have a nice little design feature, I think. I encourage you to move. And then we have, you know, little details. Those are magnetic notes, magnetic post-its on our whiteboard here, that you can wipe and then rewrite on them. What you see in the background is a couple of personas we developed for projects. That's another tool we use quite a lot in design thinking, the idea of somebody who's representative of a person that will be in that space. So this is a project room, and then up on the deck, we've got the idea of you being able to retreat and, you know, maybe have a conversation in some sofas here, or if you want to do some work, there's emails or so you can do here. And I'm up on the deck now. Mm-hmm. And here we're looking back down to where I was standing when I was talking to you earlier. I'm looking down into the space now.
And actually, I want to mention that it's a lot of design here in the details.
Yeah.
What you're saying, it's so like lots of attention made to the details first, and the second, lots of things. I know you designed exactly for your space only, like all of these stairs, yeah, with.
So I'm looking down the stairs now. What you see here, the architects, what they wanted to do is they wanted to give you this feeling of like you're looking at a picture frame and you're looking down into the space. And it's actually quite a nice effect. That's a little detail of the space here. So I'm going back down again with you. Yeah, that's a picture frame effect they wanted to have. Yeah, so a lot is in the detail. That is true. You know, I think there are architects in the audience. The structure I'm in is only resting on 3 feet, but it's very stable. I'll give you an architecture detail here, because you see this sort of fishbone structure here.
Yeah.
In this meeting, the structure runs like this, and in the meeting next door, it's at a 90 degree angle. So maybe I can show you. If you look in here, you see they go like this.
Yeah.
And this stabilizes the entire structure. So that's an architecture detail for you there, that the architects put in there. Also, you have little things if you're into architecture details. If you look up into room now, the lighting of the space, you know, this rib structure creates this nice effect of light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. So that's another nice effect.
Mentioning the details, I meant also the architectural details, but also what you show us with posted, magnetic posted, with an opportunity to use furniture that kind of manipulating some behavior that we want to see in the space, with what you showed us with the chair and so on. And it's so important. It's so small, but in the whole picture, it looks great, and it's really helps us to make the space works as we want it actually to work.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you probably know the Vitra Tipton chairs, don't you? Yeah. They make you lean forward, so that's another little detail. I mean, you're interior designers. You probably know many more examples than I do. But it's the details often are not the details. They're important.
They're really important.
Yeah. So, anything else I can show you?
I think for today you showed us like a whole big world. Thank you very much, because I think it's really great. I love your space. I love what you're doing, and I hope everything will come back to normal very soon. And you will be able to use the space for maximum value, and really. Thank you very much, Andreas. It was a really important talk. I hope we will be able to talk one more time. And I see lots of thank you for the answers. And thanks. Thank you very much for joining.
Nice talking to you.
Yeah, I'll stop the translation in a moment. Mm-hmm.